We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network with our special guest, senior political analyst at libertynation.com, Tim Donner, who also happens to be the long-term host of this here radio show. Tim, thanks for coming back in.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Let's get to it.
So earlier in the show, we talked lessons for 2024, governors, their rise and fall, and now it's all about abortion for us, Tim. It's abortion dominated the 2023 ballot, and in my opinion, I think it's going to be an outweighing issue in the 2024 election. What's your analysis, please?
Well, as we've said, I think the best way to describe this off-year election, and really you have to look at the cycle too, the 2 off years before and after a presidential election, you can argue about it, but I think of the 4 years in the cycle, the one before the presidential election has proven to be the least significant. But that's history, and there's so many new things that have never happened before, ever, in this election, that it is worth noting. Now, abortion has been a problem from the moment Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, because the Democrats have total clarity on their position. They are opposed to virtually any restriction, period. They want it written into state constitutions. They want it written into law by state legislatures. They're crystal clear, and the voters see that. The Republicans, on the other hand, have never come up with a united message on how we move forward with abortion. Some people say 6 weeks, some people say 15 weeks, some people say we should write it into the Constitution, some say they shouldn't. Some will say that there should be less restriction, others say there should be more. And, you know, Mark, it reminds me of the debate about health care when they were trying to overturn Obamacare, where the Democrats were 100% united. When the Republicans tried to overturn it, they had a ton of different good ideas, but they could never unite behind a single policy that they could sell to the American people. We're getting the same sense here. I think the answer is that the voters do not trust the Republicans on the issue of abortion because of that lack of clarity. And I think you saw that at the ballot in 2023. So the Republicans, who have virtually every other issue working for them in 2024, they've got, of course, the economy, all these issues. Biden is underwater, the economy. He's got 2 wars compared
if I may point out
Trump's
on
record
this,
of peace.
Like almost all polling, when it's polled by the issues, Trump beats Biden in every single one except for handling of coronavirus, which is a dead issue now.
Which is no longer an issue, and it was like a 1 or 2 point margin for Biden. So even on that issue, the only issue he could win on was one that's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, nobody's going to be voting on COVID-19, and that shows you we didn't know in 2020 ever, having ever seen in our lifetimes, really ever in the history of the Republic, how a pandemic would affect a presidential election. And we saw very clearly, I don't think any president could have won a second term in the midst of a pandemic. I think Trump proved that. And here, the issue of abortion, yes, the Republicans can try to unite on it. I don't see it happening, though, Mark, because I think there's serious and real divisions about the way to handle the abortion issue for all the years of being sort of comfortably pro-life and just saying in every campaign, I stand for life. They were not prepared for what would happen when they actually got their way. And that's a failing of the pro-life movement, and frankly of the Republican Party and the conservative movement writ large. There has been little to no coordination about an issue that they should have known would be very damaging to them, The question is, though, can the single issue election of 2023 translate to any serious degree to 2024? And we don't know the answer to that because it's the first time abortion has been on the ballot, really, in a presidential election.
Sorry.
In presidential elections, people vote their pocketbooks. They vote peace, they vote prosperity. Yeah. And that's always been the way that it's been. And in times of war, they vote either for or against the incumbent heavily because of his conduct of the war. And even though we're not directly in a war, we are essentially looking at a wartime presidency. So how can abortion change the long-time pattern of people voting on their pocketbooks in presidential elections?
I think a point you made there, it really hits home. The idea that Republicans, that they haven't got a plan for how to present their arguments. So, for example, they say, I'm pro-life. Good. What does that mean?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of numbers? What does that mean in terms of legislation?
Translated into law now, because 50 different states now have to
actually,
set
Tim,
law.
If I may, that's where I feel the GOP has just gone completely wrong. You see, for years they said, let's overturn Roe v. Wade. And that should have just sent it back to the states. But they didn't realize, which is political naivety on their part, that all that would really mean is that the Democrats can then unite and say, look, we've got this experiment, these 50 petri dishes, and we need to make sure that abortion is, well, it used to be safe, legal, and rare. But now they're just safe, legal, and ubiquitous, I guess, is the thing. But they've got
here's the thing,
a message that spans every state, so they can fundraise in every state. They can coordinate in every state. Republicans let themselves down.
Look, the Supreme Court cannot make decisions based on politics, but when they overturned Roe v. Wade, look, the Republicans, conservatives, they knew this was coming. They were pretty much certain that Roe v. Wade would be overturned, and yet they did not plan for it. Because, as you said very effectively, what they created was 50 new oppositional electorates in 50 different states. How many people, here's a question you could bring it down to. When the dust has settled and the smoke has cleared from the 2024 election, how many people who would not have voted for Joe Biden for obvious reasons decided to vote for him strictly because he would protect a woman's right to abortion? The answer to that question will be probably one of the most significant revelations of the 2024 election.
Now, somebody who I always listen to about politics, you might know her. Her name's Lisa K. Donner. She's our editor-in-chief, and I believe you're married to her.
I've heard of her.
But she made the point that Donald Trump, this particular issue, abortion here, this could be the thing that pushes Donald Trump to choose somebody, but not necessarily Nikki Haley, who has a very clear message on it. I mean, she makes the point that her husband was adopted. She found it difficult in the first place to get pregnant, and yet she doesn't believe that the government should have much say at all in the thing. And now Donald Trump has also been walking a bit of a tightrope on this, and he's been lobbing a few bombs about that's too strict, which may upset some of his more Christian base. But I think, in terms of getting away from the accusations of he's a pro-life extremist, is very, very useful for people who, as you point out, they don't want to vote for Joe Biden because, let's be fair, the world's falling apart foreign policy-wise under his watch. The economy is in tatters. Yes, inflation's down, but all that means that things are getting more expensive, slightly slower than they were.
Right.
But I think this is really crystallizing Donald Trump's campaign and who he may or may not choose for his running mate. We've just got a few seconds left, Tim. Give me your thoughts on that, please.
I concur with that view completely, because Nikki Haley is someone who is viewed as the most I suppose if you're a Democrat, you'd say the most reasonable Republican running for president, the most balanced. She is a woman. I think she would have appealed to those pesky, fickle suburban white women who were all over the map, depending on what year it is. And I think she could soften. I think she could soften the issue somewhat for him, and she's a deft politician. I would say the results of this 2023 election make the selection of Nikki Haley to run with Trump, I don't know about far more likely than it would have been, but certainly more likely, because Donald Trump has a keen eye for politics. He can see these things. His pick of Pence was really good in 2016. And if he picked Haley this time, it might be an equally deft choice.
Tim Donner, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Always fun, Mark. Thank you.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.